Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. This is a special interview. Today, I am delighted to talk again to Professor Dr. Mustafa Abu Sway, who is talking to us from Jerusalem in occupied Palestine. You are most welcome, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair.
For those who don't recall, Dr. Mustafa Abu Sway is the first holder of the integral chair for the study of Imam Ghazali's work at the Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque and at Al-Quds University. He's also a member of the Islamic Waqf Council in Jerusalem and member of the Hashemite Fund for the Restoration of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. He's also been a professor of philosophy and Islamic studies at Al-Quds University in Jerusalem, Palestine, since 1996. Now, the whole world is in a state of shock about the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The outcome seems uncertain, but the tragedy of the deaths of so many innocent people is truly shocking. Today, we are going to look at the history of the Palestinian people, a context that is often missing from media reports, at least in the Western media. This context is absolutely vital if we wish to understand what is really going on. So, sir, can you introduce us to this historical context and then perhaps tell us what life is like under Israeli occupation? And finally, the ways forward. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Jazakumullah khair. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. Of course, by speaking about the historical context about the Palestinian issue, from the beginning, but the beginning, we have so many beginnings as one will see. It's important because I see that the media in general do not really highlight more than usually the event that is taking place. And it is tragic. And let me say at the outset that by talking about the historical context, by talking about the failure of the political leaders, by highlighting that, hopefully we will get to, finally, peace, which should always be based on justice.
Yes.
Let me say also that. A personal, touch. I don't think that I have ever said this on record because the context probably would not warrant this. I have donated blood in many countries in 3 continents, and I kept donating blood until I was told ultimately that my blood has some antidote. I was exposed to something that, and I should not. Not that I cannot. I should not. Donate blood because they will not accept my blood. And I have donated blood in places where all kinds of people, all backgrounds could benefit from that blood. It was not directed. Probably in one country in particular, it was not directed to a specific community, but one country in particular in Africa, probably most of the citizens were Muslims, but I did donate blood in places where it could be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or an atheist could benefit from that blood. It was not really directed to a specific, person or a community. And in Jerusalem, I have donated to, I would like to call it an inclusive institution that distributes medical equipment to sick people, to special needs people, and many times really over these. I'm saying this because it's important for people to understand where we come from and that we do care. I'm a member also of a medical ethics committee in one of our hospitals in Jerusalem. So What I'm trying to say is that I do care. I do care about human life, not only as a public theologian, if you will, if I may construct this, but also, in practice, I have tried to pitch in, and I will still do that. The media really fails to cover also, or to challenge the narrative, or sometimes certain things could look benign. I'm not sure whether people understand the importance of explaining things. For example, I've noticed on CNN today that they mentioned that fewer people, a low turnout at Al-Aqsa Mosque of worshippers for the Friday prayer. And I've seen it somewhere else also. And no one explained that you have so many checkpoints surrounding Jerusalem, preventing people from reaching Al-Aqsa Mosque from where I live. And I live practically a walking distance from Al-Aqsa Mosque. I have to admit that I don't like to walk that distance. I try to drive. Probably age. I used to walk, and still, if I have to, I do walk. The 5 checkpoints, one opposite the Ras Al Amud Mosque, and they filter people, youngsters could not go through. Then another one near the Church of the Gethsemane, just a couple of hundred meters to the north, but already is the valley, foot of Mount of Olives. Then up again, and we are now at the bottom of the very short street leading up to Lions Gate, another filter, and there they blocked literally the whole street, and there was like there's some stairs to the left when you are going up, and people were crowded, and they were again filtering us for age. And slowly you could see that the crowd is really a bit more old than the rest of those who were filtered and sent back. Again, another checkpoint at the gate itself, at Lions Gate, another one, the Bab al-Asbad that leads to Al-Aqsa Mosque. So that context was missing. Simply, they would say low turnout, as if Muslims were not going, to the mosque on Wednesday. It did strike me that the mosque was empty, precisely. Yes, there are people who were afraid to go around, but I could hear the church bells of Jerusalem, and it was 12 o'clock sharp, and I took few pictures, and because it was empty. And again, I know very well that people were turned, back from the gates of the mosque, because when I entered, they just sent a young woman. I know a woman who was not really that young the day before she was sent back, and today at dawn, even a 71 years old man was turned back, but he went to another gate, and they would let him in. There were few young men inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, which means certain groups, certain soldiers would be more strict than others. But right. Again, the media that says, that low turnout, which one would always need to check really the news. So
it's very striking as an outsider. I've never had the privilege of going to your city, but it is the amount of control the Israelis have over the Palestinians, over the Muslim population there, controlling every aspect of their lives. And that kind of police state control is very evident in what you've said. And it's very hard for me to, it reminds me a bit like Northern Ireland, perhaps, and during the worst time when, the Catholics and the Protestants, there was a sense of one community controlling another, the dominant Protestant community controlling the movements of Catholics, around the place, around the streets, around the roads, around the shops. Very like a military structure. Extraordinary.
In fact, now the Palestinians in their own cities in the West Bank, they are simply locked inside these cities. Like Bethlehem is like a medieval large citadel, if you will. Literally, there's a wall, And this wall has a massive, like the one that I use, the gate that I go through usually to Bethlehem, the northern one, literally there's a gate, like a massive iron slide gate. It's massive. I mean, trucks, buses could go through, and they are inside. This is Mitri Rahib. I'm sure that probably Reverend Mitri Rahib from the Dar al-Kalima college. This reverend is, writes quite a lot about the Palestinian issue. So they are locked in the roads. The Palestinians from the West Bank cannot use every road. Sometimes the road is in the West Bank, like I think the road, the number is 443, but just in case I made a mistake, it's road 443 west of Ramallah. It's really in the land of the West Bank, but they cannot drive on that road. So again,
my understanding is that under international law, this is illegal. This kind of ghettoization of the Palestinians, the control by the Israelis, is actually illegal under international law, isn't it?
When President Clinton visited the area, and he spoke about land contiguity, because he saw that it's like a Swiss cheese. These cities and towns, they are separated from each other by settlements and colonies and what have you. So they don't have the land contiguity, and probably later on one of the slides would show how
yes,
it's just like literally holes in the in fact, probably we can just go to this map and show that how that's how Palestine began. The green color is Palestine, 1947. And
so just to clarify, if I may interrupt you, in 1947 then, what was the political situation in Palestine in 1947?
It was the British mandate still, and Palestine is the biggest failure in imperial Britain. I don't know whether the mentality has totally disappeared. As you can see, you have the UK is mobilizing warships, and this what we have right now is in a big way it's British heritage. And in fact, Israel uses laws that are they were used during British time. They are used for collective punishment, but they are British really in essence. So this is in 1947. You could see that the Palestinians owned, and I don't like this Jewish settlement and the Palestinian land. The Palestinian land, even where the Jewish settlement existed, but it shows really the very little, practically, relatively speaking, the land that they owned in 1947. And out of a sudden, you can see the partition plan, and I would love to simply spend a minute or two.
Please.
What could you see here? This would continue according to partition plan. This could continue that as a Palestinian. You can see how a Palestinian state, which is practically 3 pieces with hardly connected in the north. This would be the Galilee, not all of it, of course, and wider than the West Bank, which you could see right here, as unfolded in later on. But this is a partition plan that was rejected by the Palestinians, and I would say rightly so, even if it led to all the misery that we faced. We had it like this, and why we should accept this. I think it's very important to realize that the Jews were mistreated. The pogroms, Eastern European pogroms in Russia, Kristallnacht is European par excellence. It took place in Germany.
Yeah.
The Holocaust is European. So they were literally. I mean, the word mistreated is really is not fair to what they endured in Europe.
If I could just clarify that overwhelmingly the Germans and others were Christians. I read a survey yesterday. Overwhelmingly, the German people, German soldiers and so on, identify themselves as good Lutherans or Catholics. These were Christians who were, as they'd often done over many, many centuries in Europe, literally 1,500 years, were occasionally persecuting Jews. But it had a crescendo in the 1930s and the 40s. With the pogroms, as you call them, in the Holocaust. But this was a European phenomenon. No Muslims were involved at all in this whatsoever. It was only Christians who were involved in the persecution of Jews. And this is in living memory, actually. I mean, if you're very, very old, I mean, this is not ancient history.
It's the earlier, much earlier persecution of Jews, even during the Crusades. They did kill Jews in Europe on their way to Jerusalem. That's also given. And so let me also say that the rise of the nation state, that's also something that people miss mentioning. Europe, now we talk about end of the 19th century. Europe was already, for almost 600 years, Europe was at the throat of each other, about a couple of wars each year. Hardly, I mean, definitely the Osnabrück agreement that was signed, and it was not 100% Catholic Protestant, because France, as you well know, was not really on its own side, if you will, if you talk about the Catholics. But it was very important, and I think it's very important because even later on, I know the context is different, but when I think about the Shiite-Sunnite relationship and how things could, got sour over the years, I think we also, as Sunnites and Shiites, we need a way out, some kind of a. It's not a state-to-state, which I welcome any bilateral agreement, but I'm talking about more of really a new social contract, if you will. But that would really put the 1,400 years old division aside, and that we will help each other to get out of this mess, which is not really theological in the first place, as it were. That's not our story today. But nation state building in Europe, emerging, persecution of the Jews. This is why Herzl thought about establishing a national home for the a Jewish state, really, because that's in his memoir. It was very obvious. He wanted to establish a Jewish state, and the three options: Latin America and Africa, and of course Palestine. These were options that the Jews had. They had some kind of a Jewish state in Russia. But it's a different story. And in his memoirs, available for free online for those who would like to read, Herzl wanted a pure state for the Jews, not only a solution. Marx wrote about the Jewish question. And it was definitely a Eurocentric problem. Sometimes we just simply think about Germany as well as the problem at the time. We should contextualize it historically, but really it goes beyond Germany. And there are certain things that, there's a call. A former religious advisor to President Trump just called for prayer for the Jews, for Israel. And I don't think those evangelicals wish the Jews well, and that their end game is definitely not not healthy at all. Their end game is really the end of the Jews, and I'm really sorry that they are also being used. I know it, and I've lived so many years in the United States, and I think I should not speak about the even private conversations that I had with people when, as a Palestinian, because it was I went, over the years between 1984 and until today, I continue going in the United States. My MA and PhD from Boston College, and I've been a visiting professor there, and I continue going there. I don't really think that beyond the politicians, I think the picture might not be that not that good, and they might not be they might not be aware of that kind of use in terms of the strategic relations with states, and despite the niceties of that the politicians would say. So this. In fact, Herzl would say, going back to the Herzl would say something like driving the penniless, like without any penniless outside that future state and creating jobs for them outside. So the idea of a pure state is there in the Herzl thinking. So Zionist thinking does have that element.
Now, can I clarify that Theodor Herzl, who you mentioned, is the founder of, Zionism. Yes. Was he actually an atheist?
I don't know that. But if you look at, I can tell you about the First Zionist Congress, but in Basel, Switzerland. But I think just one more thing about the partition plan in Palestine. Okay, yeah. We have only one fresh lake, okay, and that's Tiberias Lake, okay, and you can see that it is in the partition plan that only fresh, water lake is given to the in the partition plan, not the Palestinians. I mean, one lake, and it's given to the Jews. And I mean, anyone who would look at this would ask the question, why? I mean, if you are trying to partition the land, why don't you partition also the water? By the way, if you notice, it is Syria on this side. That's the Golan Heights, just simply on the edge, the eastern side of the Tiberias Lake.
So the Tiberias Lake, for those who don't know, is that the blue water area at the top right?
Yes, it's a very small. This is the Dead Sea here. And
which is the Dead Sea? Sorry,
Dead Sea. It's extremely salty. It's
whereabouts on the map? Sorry, is it the one in the middle on the right? The one that's kind of rectangular.
This is the Dead Sea, and this is the Tiberias Lake in the north, in the upper
right.
part.
Yeah, so Tiberias one, because it doesn't say on the map what the lakes are. So which one?
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's but here is the Golan Heights, and you know that the United States recognized. I think it's the only country that recognized the Golan Heights as.
The United States is the only country in the world that recognized it as part of.
And if you talk about international law, it means that Syria also, has part of this body of water. But the partition plan again. Right here, the partition plan would have given Tiberias Lake to the, to the Jews, and again, I find it very problematic to say Jews versus Palestinian, because there were Palestinian Jews all the way until 1948, and in fact, many of the Zionist leaders had Palestinian passports. So this is really part of the story. There are two small areas. Jerusalem itself was not included in either, so that will be an international, territory, if you will. So it's extraterritorial in terms of what's going on in the partition plan, and this is also why the overwhelming majority of countries around the world do not recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and this is why when people like His Majesty King Abdullah II, time and again, and he's not the only one, but he definitely his voice is extremely important because he is the custodian of the holy places in Jerusalem.
Yes, indeed.
He speaks that there will be no peace in the region, not only in Palestine, in the whole region, without a Palestinian state, independent Palestinian state. And by this, you talk about the West Bank, including East Jerusalem here, and the Gaza Strip. So the failure of the politicians to reach this, though, will hopefully will reach in our talk. We'll reach the Oslo Accords and the what went wrong. I mean, definitely many things went wrong since then. But this is what we had in 1947, the partition plan. And you talk about this map is pretty much the outcome of the 1967, the June 6, 1967 war. And I would say read Miko Pelid's, the general's son, because his father, in fact, his grandfather was signatory to the Declaration of Independence, but his father was a member of the high-ranking general in the Israeli army, and he says clearly that it was Israel that attacked the Arab countries. It was pre-planned, premeditated, and by 1967 they have already consolidated the occupation of all this land, plus all the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights here, and just small pieces of land from Jordan. This map here shows the because of the Oslo Accords in 1994, dividing the West Bank into areas A, B, and C. Area A, where the Palestinian Authority would be responsible 100% for the both security and municipal, civilian issues. Area B, the security is the Israeli occupation forces, but the administration, civil administration, would continue to be with the Palestinian Authority. Area C, which is the largest, is both security and civil administration would be the Israeli occupation forces. So pretty much the Palestinians were left with a fraction of the land that they hoped would make the upcoming state. Originally, the Oslo Accords, we talk about 5 years where all the final issues would have been implemented. But since the both gentlemen, Rabin and Arafat, who signed on the lawn of the White House, both of them were assassinated, one by bullets and one was poisoned. I think this is really it signals, I hope not in the as an end game, but it does signal something about the fate of the Oslo Accords.
Just saying, I remember seeing Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, recently at the United Nations, just a week or two ago, holding up a map, what he claimed was a map of Israel, and it was all of it was just Israel.
Yes.
Completely. There was no Palestinian territories, Gaza Strip, West Bank did not exist. So he's the leader of that, and he simply has taken over the whole of the country. So there's not even a pretense anymore at giving the Palestinians any areas at all. They're completely controlled by the Jews, which goes against international law. It goes against everything. So, but this is the reality of the current regime, it seems.
I would say that completely controlled by Israel, by Zionists, yes, by Israel, yes, by the Jews that we know that there are Jews who are still against what's going on, and they are still looking for a fair, just end of the Israeli occupation. So probably that's more accurate to say the Zionists, or to say Israel. That would be fine.
Okay.
And I'm not surprised that Netanyahu would hold such a map. People forgot. The Israel keeps blaming the Palestinian leadership, and I'm talking about really the president, for example, Mahmoud Abbas. They keep saying that there is no partner for peace amongst the Palestinians, which is nonsense. What should the Palestinians do more than what they have done?
But isn't that rather a convenient attitude to have, that there's no partner for peace? Well, that's then they don't have to negotiate, they don't have to concede, they don't have to compromise. They can just say, oh, we don't have anyone, so we're just going to carry on. And it's not, it's a self-serving justification in a way. It's in their interests to say that.
Of course, if people would press them on the issue of peace, they would say there's no partner on the other side. This is and they forget that the Likud internally, they had unanimous vote internally against the establishment of Palestinian state, and nary a word about that. Since Netanyahu as prime minister, he has been in and out of office, if you will,
yes,
since 1996 probably, and this is why there is an editorial in Haaretz, a very new editorial that really blames the failure on him for what happened during the last few days. But I would have loved the editorial that would have highlight the failure of Israeli leadership about really reaching peace with the Palestinians. They did not. He thought. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I don't want to get into the geopolitics of this, but many people would surely say, okay, what you're saying makes sense, but behind all this, and this is the geopolitical reality, is the United States, of course. And if they weren't financing to the tune of trillions of dollars and weaponry and armory and vetoes in the Security Council, etc., if they weren't having Israel's back, as they always say they are, Democrat or Republican, many people would say that is the issue in enabling these issues within Israel, as you say, to continue. Without America's backing, surely the whole world could be very different, and they wouldn't be able to get away with any of this, arguably.
Well, probably only the words change from time to time, but in essence, it's the same policy. Madeleine Albright said that as long as the sun rises, and their support Israel, as long as the sun rises, Secretary Blinken said that as long as the United States exists. But we know very well that also could change. And I'm not talking, I'm talking about it could change if you put enough pressure, like the case of East Timor. The United States supported Suharto in terms of occupying East Timor. This is to my knowledge. And ultimately, after all these years, they succeeded in gaining independence, when really the rest of the world was telling the United States, and they're just like, enough is enough. And then it took really one war, then and it unfolded in a sense. And probably it's a sensitive issue for Indonesia, but I'm talking about how things work. In fact, even in the world of the economics, the IMF, the World Bank, and all these treaties, thousands of pages, and people might believe that it is really a neo-liberal economy is the is the real paradigm. But ask really people who are experts in the field, they will tell you it's about power. It's not about really, it's about power. So even in economics, exactly. And those if Netanyahu was happy with Micronesia recognizing Israel and voting on the side of Israel in the United Nations. That should not really make them happy. Even, I'm sorry, for any agreement, people are free to do their own bilateral agreements with Israel, but they should have really reached the agreement with people next door, the Palestinians. I mean, this is really the issue. And it's almost like as if, my words are really could be translated into I'm appealing. I would love that people would go back to their senses, and really it's people next door. It's not somewhere else. You don't need another Disney to visit. You don't need, that's really the issue. And it's right here that you make peace with your own neighbors, and precisely you make peace with your own enemies. There should be no love story. Sometimes, the journalists are so naive to speak about, whether you have friendship, whether you just pass the litmus test, if you will, of the journalists, and it's only applicable to us, it seems, as Palestinians, and it's not fair. And I think there is a certain degree of Islamophobia in this. There is the dehumanization, and in fact, if we speak about the Balfour Declaration, and probably let's proceed a little bit before reaching the Balfour Declaration. This is really a picture of the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland.
Theodore Herzl's conference, isn't it?
Yes.
And in fact, you mentioned earlier.
Yes. And in fact, I've noticed, first of all, you would notice that they were in tuxedos.
Yes.
They are in tuxedos. That's very, very important, very large number. Number two, there were Christian delegations. Number three, the Jewish community in Munich, to my knowledge, refused to. Even in Germany at the time, most of the Jewish rabbis overwhelmingly voted against. Their position was against holding the Zionist Congress there. And I personally did pass by the hotel in Basel. I had a lecture at the University of Basel a few years back, and I was invited by Professor Ott. God knows whether he is still around or not, but he did strike me as someone who more or less accepts the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, which is not the topic. So I did pass by the hotel where the conference took place, and let me say one thing. The Ashkenazi, pretty much this is an Ashkenazi Jewish, Zionist thing. The Sephardic Jews were not part of this. We Palestinians, who are the owners of the land, nobody told us anything about this.
Palestinians were not part of this at all. This Congress,
no.
Included, discussed with, negotiated with. So it was just okay. Yeah.
The Israeli leadership was pretty much, for a long time, it was Ashkenazi.
Right. The Ashkenazi, you mentioned that these are kind of Eastern Europe, Germanic, German-speaking Jews, and so on. And
the Sephardic, it comes from the Hebrew word Sfarad, which means Spain.
Yes, and Spain and Portugal, the congregations. In fact, very near where I'm sitting,
the Iberian Peninsula. But after the Reconquista, of course, no more Jews, no more Muslims in the Iberian Peninsula, no more Andalusia. Of course, Andalusia is still there as
in July.
But the Muslim world was really opened its arms for the Jews, and as it should have been the case. In fact, it's very important to mention that the Jews were not allowed in Jerusalem for a long time during the previous rulers of Jerusalem for quite some time. And when Muslims conquered the city in 636, regardless of, they allowed the Jews back. And this is the Geniza manuscripts. And Professor Mark Cohen of Princeton University is an expert on the Geniza. These are Cairo Jewish manuscripts, and in these manuscripts, it is documented that the Muslims allowed them back in Jerusalem, and they did say that they lived in the what became known as the Jewish market. I assume later on it became the Jewish quarter. But of course, like every quarter in the history of Jerusalem, things were not categorically. You don't have really a gate leading to your quarter. In fact, until today, there are still mosques in the Jewish quarter. Unfortunately, that in 1967, the Moroccan quarter was literally destroyed. An 800 years neighborhood was literally destroyed by bulldozers. There was a school, a Muslim school, and a Muslim mosque in that open space west of Al-Aqsa Mosque. So this is really what was next, is that the Zionists really now they were lobbying for this the nation state that they wanted to establish, and this is why the Balfour Declaration will become within the same context. And 1 year before the Balfour Declaration, we have the Sykes-Picot Agreement dividing the Middle East. I'm using the word Middle East liberally here, into areas of French and British.
So Sykes was a British civil servant type person, and Picot was his French
yes
in Paris, and they equally had this agreement between them to slice up the Levant, yes, or the Middle East, as you see.
Exactly. The Kingdom of Italy, as what was called then, was in the picture. Russia, Tsarist Russia, was also in the picture. Russia probably was more interested in what we call Iran today. Italy had its own share somewhere else, a little bit in Italy, in Libya, 11/11, really. Once I had a kind of a side discussion. There was a conference, and we were discussing which country used weapons of mass destruction first. And
who won that dubious award?
I lost. Probably I lost, though I still believe that I might be right. But one of my friends said it was Britain testing weapons of mass destruction in the desert of Iraq. There was no war, nothing. They're simply testing the.
Well, wasn't that Winston Churchill who first used chemical weapons against the Kurds in what is now called Iraq, or was called Iraq?
I'm not sure about. I know that Winston Churchill led, to the a massive famine in the Bay of Bengal at the time by diverting the ships of grain, and millions of people died because of that. And when it was mentioned to him, he said, "Why Gandhi did not die?" So that was really so. But my position was it was Italy in the Horn of Africa. So whatever, it's still if they are looking for who was first, one of them. It doesn't make really much difference. So so they divided the area, but I think it was all planned, because this agreement was supposed to be it was a secret agreement, and they were preparing themselves for the end game after the end of the World War I, and dividing the region amongst themselves. And of course, they betrayed the British in particular. The French did horrible things. The British did also, but if you think about the British history in Algeria, for example, North Africa, it was horrible. Burning people alive in caves. That's a long story. But here we have now the Balfour Declaration.
Gosh. November
17, 1917. Britain simply gave a pledge to establish a national home for the Jews in Palestine. The next, this is really Balfour himself, the foreign minister of Britain at the time. And I have the text really here, and it's clearer because I wanted to highlight something which is still the case until today. First of all, Britain did not own the land, the Palestine. That's not theirs to distribute. That's one thing. Number two, if you notice, right here, it says, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. But look at how we have been described in this text: non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So we are not Arabs, we are not Palestinians, we are not Christians and Muslims, we are not. So basically, you talk about some degree of the invisible Palestinian. So the dehumanization that we see today is not very far from almost a little bit more than 100 years earlier, that we have been reduced to non-Jewish communities, though we were the majority. So as if we don't have a civilization, as if we don't have culture, as if we, in fact, we still have that culture that I cherish. I love our culture. I love the Palestinian embroidered, because it's not only embroidered. People can ask the old ladies. They will read the embroidery. They know, whether it's in fact, you will find plenty of flora, Palestinian flora, in the embroidery. Okay, certain beautiful patterns, but the Palestinian, flora, you could, any anthropologist could really make a wonderful study of the meaning of these symbols in the Palestinian dress. And as a child, I know that my mother would recognize ladies where they came from based on their embroidered dress. So whether it's our cuisine, our dress, our songs, our we are not really, we did not land from the moon, would not land definitely from Mars. We have been in this land. Jericho is the oldest known agricultural settlement in the world, almost 12,000 years ago.
It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, continuously inhabited city on Earth. Actually, I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
So this is really, it does tell you, people are making decisions not on your behalf, against your, welfare. It's against your future. It's against your existence, against everything about you. You simply, now you are reduced, and I can see the reduction, the dehumanization in many things. It could be the language, it could be the laws. Let me
the Nakba.
maybe it's maybe we should give it some time to for the slides. Should I upload it again?
Is there a slide missing?
Because it does not move neither. Okay, here's the Balfour Declaration. Here's the text that we had. Let me see if we can. 8. Would you like to upload it again the way you did? No, I have numbers there. But map, a clearer map, of course, with details about the plan of partition 1947. You can see that the yellow is the Arab state, and the greenish, the turquoise, is the Jewish state, and the white is the city of Jerusalem. And I think there was something, of course, about Jaffa as well.
And you can actually see in there the Lake Tiberias. You mentioned that earlier.
This Lake Tiberias, and now it is
actually named as a Lake Tiberias in this particular map. Yeah.
This is, I think people probably can read it now, and it does say that Syria here. This is the Golan Heights, and now it is clear that we talk about the Lebanon border. The area is rich not only with ancient cities, of course, but it's really history. If you talk about Akka, really, in Arabic, this is the city that defeated Napoleon Bonaparte. So if you talk about his military campaign, 1798 to 1801, really it ended right here, and it's this is the Gulf of Haifa. And this is like until 1948, because all those who speak about Palestine, they forget to mention what we had until then. Sometimes they might say things like the president of the European Union, when she participated in the 75th celebration of their independence, praised her words would mimic the Zionist claim that they made the land bloom, something like that. Well, again, we have just mentioned that Jericho is the oldest known agricultural settlement in the world, and I'm pretty sure that the Palestinians knew how to cultivate the land. And in fact, we have literally olive trees that are, more than 1,000 years old.
No, I've seen pictures. Yeah.
And part of the some of these trees, we call them Roman. Not really that we have decided to give them that name. They go back to very old times. So agriculture, everybody knows, and it's a long story. But the flora and fauna is even biblical, if you'd like to take it as a source for that would tell you about what was going on in terms of agriculture, in terms of produce and what have you. In fact, before 1948, we Palestinians used to export Jaffa oranges to Europe. This is not a new thing. Now let me move. No, okay. So
you're going to talk about the Nakba now, but I promise you that most people in Britain, probably most people in Europe, have never heard of this word before, have no idea what you're about to talk about, even though it is one of the most important events, I should say, in the history of the Middle East in the 20th century. And most Europeans have no idea. And that is a real scandal, actually. And it speaks to precisely the issues we're talking about, the non-personhood of the Palestinian. It's just Jews and non-Jews, as you said in the Balfour Declaration. But sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but I just want to introduce this by saying that the vast majority of Europeans and Americans have no idea what you're about to say, although it's it's difficult to exaggerate how important what you're about to say is. Anyway, I won't say anymore.
Well, the Nakba of 1948. This is really everything. The First Zionist Congress, the Balfour Declaration, the British Mandate, everything that took place was preparing really for this particular moment. It was either we say it was tremendous failure of the British Mandate or tremendous success. It depends how you view things. And I have noticed there are so many pictures of Palestinians leaving their homes, but this picture in particular, why there are pictures of Palestinians in their camps, in tent camps at the beginning. Most Palestinian refugees live in Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. They continue to do so. In Jordan, they are equal citizens. 100%. Syria is, has its own system in general. I don't know much about the legal, but in general, because of Pan-Arabism was the ideology of Syria, so they had some comfort one way or the other there. But in Lebanon, and we will probably reach more about this, I want to say that Palestinian refugees continue to be in these overcrowded camps.
But can we just say what we're talking about here? Because again, as I say, most people in the West,
I think I should go back to
no idea what we're talking about. What is, first of all, what does the word Nakba mean? Because it has a
catastrophe. It's catastrophe.
Catastrophe. So the word means catastrophe in English,
yes.
Of course. So we're dealing with some cosmically catastrophic event that happened to the Palestinian people, which is really actually key to what you're talking about, which we just don't know about in the West. Well, most people don't. I mean,
I'll get back to this picture, but let me show you. You talk about
what is the catastrophe we're talking about?
The catastrophe is that people lost their homes, lost their land, lost their livelihood. They were forced out of their home. And
sorry to be very basic. And
yes. Okay, thank you.
I really want to be very elementary.
Now,
we all know who forced the Palestinians out of their homes.
Okay, the Rabin's memoirs would be more appropriate to mention, because he said that it was very important to drive the Palestinians to in the direction of Ramallah from Lydia and Ramla. There was a massacre there in the mosque, but they still force people, despite.
Who is they? Who is forcing?
Okay, we talk about the Zionist. In fact, the British brandished them as terrorist organizations. These are terrorist Jewish, military organizations. The different names. They committed few massacres. For example, in the Tantura, remember when you said this is Haifa, just close to Haifa, there was a major massacre at the Tantura, an affluent village on the Mediterranean. And many of those who attacked Tantura were neighbors, like they knew the village. There were survivors, people who survived the massacre, and Ilan Pape, I think he was the advisor of a student, who covered the Tantura.
Exactly, and this book actually talks about the event. Ilan Pape, the author, he's actually an Israeli, and he's now a professor of history at the University of Exeter here in England, actually, and he's written a book called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. And I just like to read just a paragraph. It says on the back here, the 1948 Israeli War of Independence, is exactly this year, 1948, involved one of the largest forced migrations in modern history. Around 1 million people were expelled from their homes at gunpoint. Civilians were massacred and hundreds of Palestinian villages destroyed. This is the catastrophe that you're speaking about. Denied for almost 6 decades, had it happened today, he writes, it could only have been called ethnic cleansing. This is a recent term, but the reality is there, even if the term wasn't back in 1948. In this groundbreaking book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, renowned Israeli historian Ilan Pape offers impressive archival evidence to demonstrate that from its very inception, a central plank of Israel's founding ideology, this is the Zionism you've been talking about, was the forcible removal of the indigenous people. Who were they? You mentioned them, the Palestinians, be they Christians or Jews or Muslims, because they were, removal of the indigenous population, a strategy that continues to the present day, to the 21st century. Dr. Pape's vivid and timely account sheds new light on the origins and development of the Palestine-Israel conflict and is indispensable for anyone interested in the Middle East. And it says Pape is the professor of history at the University of Exeter and author of numerous influential books on the Middle East. So if you want to read the actual archival evidence that you've just briefly alluded to yourself just seconds ago, documentary, first-hand accounts from official documentation, unofficial documentation about the deliberate policy of ethnic cleansing of Palestine from 1948 onwards, when it actually happened. The evidence is all there. Anyway, back to you.
Well, I mean, it's the same, Ilan Pape. Thank you. I mean, this is definitely an excellent book. Ilan Pape is one of his students that he worked on the doctoral dissertation on the Tantura massacre. Pretty close to Haifa, and I've watched a documentary by on the massacre that took place. Of course, as I said, not all of them were killed. Some survived, and there was one case of rape in the documentary. The Zionist participants in the massacre, they said that they had some kind of a leader who prevented the rape from taking place. A Palestinian who later on became a physician, and I think he went to Europe. He said that one of those Zionists took her to a building, and her uncle objected. They killed him. But it's not the only case of rape. Since we talk about rape in Israeli newspapers over the years, some of those who committed heinous acts during 1948. They wrote about somebody. It seems that one of them wanted to, take it off his chest before he dies, and he said that he was with they had some kind of military outpost in the desert in the Negev, and they saw a Bedouin with a young woman. They killed the man. They took the young woman. They raped her over a few days. They forced her to wear a short so that she would not look like an Arab if anybody passes by. After a few days, they deliberated like what to do with her, and ultimately they took her out of the outpost. They dug a grave. She realized that it was meant for her. She tried to run away, and they shot her. So it's not the God knows how many things took place, but this is on the outskirts of Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, Deir Yassin, really not very far. We have people who also survived Deir Yassin, but Jeff Halper, he's an American Jew who immigrated to Israel, but he's on record saying that the men and boys were paraded before they were killed. That's Jeff Halper. But as I said, if you talk about the cemetery is still there of Deir Yassin. Men, women, children were killed, and this is pretty close to. It's on top of the hill. Ain Karim is in the valley. Ain Karim had almost 5,000 Palestinian villagers, Christians and Muslims. Only one family survived, in 1948. I don't know did they stay at one of the churches in Ain Karim or not, but only one. It cannot be that they have stayed in their home. They must have stayed somewhere where they had some kind of protection. But out of those 5,000 people in Ain Karim, none lives there. And today they have a park for the righteous Gentile.
It's interesting in Europe, but there's a great deal of commemoration of the Holocaust. Indeed, it seems to be accelerating. Memorials and Holocaust days, and everyone is supposed to commemorate. I'm not commenting on that, but the
Yad Vashem. In fact, Yad Vashem is there on the in that area between Deir Yassin and Ain Karim, right there. And definitely, it's a very important issue, I would say.
If I could just finish a second, the Nakba of 1948 and you can see your slide there, is never mentioned in Europe, as far as I can see at all. Every year it happens, it goes past. It's not in the media. No politicians mention it. The Prime Minister doesn't mention it. No one mentions it, and yet it was a time where around 1 million people were expelled from their homes at gunpoint, civilians massacred, hundreds of villages destroyed, and it was ethnic cleansing, a catastrophe. And it's a shame that there isn't given, this is a mystery. This is not mentioned in the Western media and the Western historical narrative, and the retelling of the current situation never refers to this either in the contemporary political narrative. It's just disappeared, and not from your part of the world, but from the West. It's extraordinary.
Probably it's going to make a comeback one way or the other. But you have Friends of Israel in the Labour Party. You have Friends of Israel in the, in the Conservative Party. No Friends of Palestine in that sense.
Under a certain former leader of the Labour Party, who was removed, shall we say, by the
short-lived.
Who actually was very pro-Palestinian, but he was exceptional. But he was removed in a.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. This is what I say. But the word Nakba itself, officially, they passed a law.
Yeah.
In the Israeli education system, you cannot use this word. You talk about the Nakba in the Israeli education system. You talk about the Nakba as a teacher, for example. You lose your job. It's illegal. It's prohibited to use the word Nakba in the education system. And if you receive, whatever support from the Ministry of Education or whatever, it's illegal to use the word Nakba in education. And just simply a couple of words about this particular picture. Of course, you talk about, I would like to mention that Salman Abu Sway is an expert on the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, on the ethnic cleansing of these villages, both Christian and these are Palestinian villages. Some of them, of course, had Christian majority, like Iqrith and Biram in the north of the country, close to the Lebanese border. And you have an Israeli high court order that stipulates the Christian, they are Christian Palestinian, but they have today, of course, Israeli citizenship. They could go back to their two villages. They have not been allowed to go back the way it used to be, but they allow them, I think, at least to hold mass in the church or something like this, or something like that. But they are not allowed to go and live in these two, villages. You can some of the villages in West Jerusalem, like Umwas and Yalo, today it is called Canada Park. So just in case, if you see from
Canada Park, you say?
Oh, they call it Canada Park. I mean, but it's if you just walk around the area, you'll see the remains of the ruins of the Palestinian homes, the water well. You can detect these old Palestinian villages. In fact, I have been to one of these ethnically cleansed villages in the north, and it was surrounded by barbed wire, and it says military zone, but it's a very, very tiny village, and it's not a military zone. It's simply a village to which Palestinians were not allowed to go back.
To be clear, that there's no right of return then recognized for the Palestinians to return to their homes, their homeland, their country. But there is a so-called right of return for anyone in the world who is born in America or
Yes.
anywhere who self-identifies as Jewish. They can literally set up home on, say, the West Bank and live there. They have a right to return, even though they may never have been there, or their families may never have been there. They have that right. But the people who have come from that country are denied a right of return. Is that an accurate description, do you think?
Let's take Ivanka Trump. She married Jared Kushner. She was, of course, Trump's family is Christian. Jared Kushner is some kind of Orthodox Jew. She converted to Judaism. And now Ivanka Trump, she can make aliyah and she can come and have citizenship, and she can, if she wants to, to live in the West Bank. She could get a subsidy. Not that she needs that money,
No.
but those settlers have subsidized homes in the so there's an economic aspect to this, and of course you have plenty of room, plenty of space, and you have access to water that the Palestinian does not have access to. They are now they could basically run the show, the settlers. You talk about some almost a million between the West Bank and East Jerusalem, almost a million, and that's in such a small country. That's a big voting force, and now many of them used to be a fringe group, in the old days, like after 97, very, very fringe groups, and today those fringe elements, they are members of the Knesset, they are members of the government, they are everywhere, and they look at
or ethnic takeover of an entire place by people who not even have any connection with that country in terms of their own background. It's very interesting.
A settler today, it's in the news. Settler today simply was in the, we call it Msafir Yatta, just south of in the southern Hebron Hills, and he literally shot a Palestinian in the leg. And there was a soldier who did not take the settler's gun or anything. Simply, the settler just told the settler, "Come back here." It's just like it was in a very casual way. Unfortunately, we have, even the West Bank people might not realize it, that we have already lost some 40 people. Some of them were killed by settlers in Qusra near Nablus. That's what the news say. And even if you try to to keep up with the numbers of children killed early in the day, it was some 436. After the Friday prayer, 447. That's already talk about almost like 11 children. By the end of the day, it was almost 500 children in the Gaza Strip who were killed. And to tell you the truth, and I did not cry for all those who were killed until basically I saw footage of one of the hospitals in Gaza. A boy comforting his father. Both of them were on just near each other and on stretches, on beds in the hospital. And the boy was comforting his father, though the boy was wrapped. The father's hands and arms were wrapped in bandages, and the boy's face was, kind of bent, and all his head was wrapped in bandages. And the boy was comforting his father, "Do not be afraid, do not be afraid," something like that. And I just, maybe it was like building up to that moment. There was nothing in particular, but it's just like I couldn't help it. My wife next to me, she was sobbing. So that was one of these moments that ultimately you just you cannot help it anymore. About this particular picture, look at the. I could not detect men in this group of Palestinian refugees in 1948. That's why they are barefooted, but I could not see men, and it's very telling. I could not see men. You can see it right in front of you, barefooted. That's how people. They thought they could go back to their homes. That's basically one thing. And some of them attempted to go back. Some of them, there are those who are internally displaced within Israel, like these Nakba Palestinians who suffered. They were forced out of their homes, but they cannot go back to their homes. So we call them internally displaced. So they ended up in other cities, like Nazareth, for example. Okay. there are those who live in unrecognized villages. So if they are unrecognized, it means they don't get services, though they are paying citizens and what have you. In a Bedouin village, I think its name is Al-Araqib, and I think it has been demolished by the Israeli authorities a couple of hundred times, and they keep rebuilding the village. Shacks. What do they have? So this is really part of the like the heritage of the 1948 area. Some of those from West Jerusalem, like who live in other parts in the West Bank and also in East Jerusalem. For example, two of my classmates in high school were Yassini, from Deir Yassin, where the massacre took place. And practically West Jerusalem was ethnically cleansed in 1948. Affluent Palestinians, I think mostly, I don't have numbers, but my impression is that mostly Christian affluent Palestinians, but affluent Palestinians in general, also Muslims, lived in West Jerusalem in certain neighborhoods. All these beautiful villas. I mean, you have people who were born even in these homes, and people could go back and they know. So there are many homes in West Jerusalem that have Arabic, either a verse from the Quran or a prayer, or but you would know it if you know the architecture of pre-1948. You would know which house was pretty much Palestinian. So this is really so when they talk about unifying Jerusalem in 1967, my position is that Jerusalem was united until 1948, not after, not in between, and not after. The very last time Jerusalem was normal up to 1948, and in fact we are not back to that sense of normality where we belong to the same. We don't have the same. We don't have the same rights. I can't speak about many things, but let me just simply talk about taxes. The first time I knew about this, it was Professor Peter Demand from the Truman Institute at the Hebrew University. He told me that Palestinians pay the property tax called Arnona, and only 12% is returned to us as services in East Jerusalem. 10%, 12%. Later on, these numbers became public. Israeli newspapers spoke about them. It's just like, and even at one point it became 10% rather than 12% in terms of services. Olmert, the former prime minister, but when he was a mayor of Jerusalem, he's on record saying that 96% of public parks are in West Jerusalem. It does tell you something about maybe things improved later on, maybe the numbers improved a little bit, but that's what he said at the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the famous Palestinian, key of return. You will find massive replicas at the entrance of some refugee camps, at the entrance to Jericho.
What is the famous key? Sorry, for those who don't know, what is the famous key of return?
People locked people literally, if you can see people literally locked their homes. That would be a very simple lock. If you could push probably the door of these old houses with your by kicking it. So it was not a very sophisticated thing, but people continue to hold it. People wear it. I'm sure the old ladies and people. It became a symbol of Palestinian sumud, if you will, perseverance, not giving up on the right of return, but not giving up on the whole issue of being Palestinian, refusing to dissolve, if you will. That colonialism succeeded with the Aborigines in Australia. It succeeded with the Native Americans. It failed in South Africa, and here we are. We are still we are still here with our rich culture, with our poetry. And I say sometimes that as long as we produce poetry and paintings and all this art, we are live and kicking. But this is a symbol now of the catastrophe of the Nakba. So whenever you see in fact, people give each other a gift. I have two of these keys, not original. We were not subjected to the 1948 catastrophe. The 1967 the war is called Naksa in Arabic literature. There's still negative connotations, but we did experience being refugees as a family, but not the 1948. We are in 1967. We ended up outside the country for a very short period.
It could be that we're, I mean, I don't know, but we could be going under a second Nakba at the moment, literally as we speak. I'm thinking of Gaza. If the Gazas are forced out of their...
That would be the third one. That would be the third. The second one took place. Okay. I can speak about the second one. I did not plan to, but
no. I don't want to interrupt your flow.
I thought that simply that we did experience as a family. We were literally in 1967 when the war broke. I was 9 years old approximately, and I was with a group of my cousins. We were cleaning a cave west of our house on the slopes of Mount of Olives, halfway down the mountain, and we were playing in the cave, and out of a sudden we hear machine guns on the rocks above the entrance of the cave. Maybe we should not have run to our homes, because we are exposed, but we did. And of the families, my uncles really, we were hiding in a room, like an inner room that was not facing west, because the shooting came from top of Mount Sion, where the grave of Prophet David, King David, Prophet David, peace be upon him, is there, and so that area. And I don't, at one point, one of the ladies in the family from another part of the neighborhood came, and she said that there were massacres in Abu Tur. Not very far from we were. That was false rumor. There were no massacres there, but it was enough for many families who were gathered there to leave first to Jericho, and the next stage was Amman, Jordan. And Jordan, by the way, they have been hosting refugees as if basically they were destined to accommodate all those refugees, first from the Palestinians, the Iraqis, and Syrians. Talk about en masse. Sometimes I just think about how things unfold. Most of my uncles, all of them except my father, he decided to go back to Jerusalem. So he smuggled us back across the Jordan River just in time for the census that took place. So we do have there are different statuses for different areas. So within the Green Line, the 1948 area, you have Israeli citizenship. So there is discrimination, but not like in East Jerusalem. We have more. So we could lose our residency. Israel passed a law considering all Palestinians from East Jerusalem as newcomers. So we are really like a green card, okay? And Tushav in Hebrew. The West Bank today, they used also to, they used to revoke the residency of people from the West Bank, not after Oslo. Now they have what we call Palestinian passport. So Palestinians in the 1940 area, they have Israeli passports. Palestinians in the West Bank today, they have Palestinian passports. East Jerusalemites, we have Jordanian passports, but since 1988 approximately, it does facilitate our movement around, but we are not literally citizens of Jordan, if you will. So practically, East Jerusalem, we are the only ones who are stateless, if you will, but we have that kind of legal entity. You could lose in the year 2008 when Eli Yishai from Shas was the Minister of the Interior. 4,577 Palestinians from East Jerusalem lost their residency. Like literally, they would be kicked out from Jerusalem. If they come back to the country, they come as tourists. That's in 1 year. When Sharansky was Minister of the Interior, only a handful, still bad, but only a handful of people lost their residency, which tells me something about the mixture, the dangerous mixture of nationalism with religion. So it's a religious nationalist, and Zionist. So this is really the dangerous mixture, and it did reflect on us in bad in more than one way. So this is really at least one aspect of life in Jerusalem. As I said, people are divided. In fact, in there are different plate numbers for the cars. There are before Oslo, every you would have, in addition to the plate number, you would have a letter in Hebrew attached to your plate number, it would tell basically the Israeli soldiers at the checkpoint where you are coming from. So if there's a certain plate number for the West Bank with that letter. So if you're coming from Hebron, that will be Hate, the H in Hebrew. From Jericho, it's going to be Yud because Jericho is Jericho, and from Nablus, it's Sheen because it is Shechem. And I remember something that is, I smile. I know it was bad, but I smile. After 1967, the taxis, the cabs in East Jerusalem, they gave them. Of course, there were Jordanian plate numbers. Now they are Israeli plate numbers, and all of these taxis had the 666 number.
Really? Gosh.
Yes, and I think probably you would like to explain what the 666 number means.
Well, it's allegedly the number of the beast in the Book of Revelation. So it's kind of it's a symbol of evil, the Antichrist, basically.
Yeah. So I don't think that those who chose these numbers, it was simply by chance, or I think it was by design. So this is really part of. So let's try to move. There were, of course, over the years, many things happen. I mean, I cannot basically. 1936, we had the general strike in Palestine. It was still British mandate. 1956, the British and the French fought along the Israelis against Egypt. Okay, the 1968 approximately, you have a major battle that took place in the Jordan Valley in which the Palestinian, the PLO and maybe other Palestinian organizations, along with the Jordanian army, they fought bravely against the Israeli army. It's well known. They won that battle. Ultimately, in 1982, there were things that 1973, of course, you have the the Ramadan War, in which the famous Bar-Lev line was knocked down by the Egyptian army. And I think it was simply water. They have used water to knock down the massive. It was like a heap of of sand, of earth, of whatever, and it was like the military. They thought, the Israelis thought, maybe others thought, that this is undefeatable, nobody could break through, and it was simply water at high pressure, and it was knocked down. And this Sadat went to war knowing his end game, really taking Sinai back. And this is why when you go to war, what's the end game? If the end game is really that you'd replace a regime, for example, look at the mess that was created in in countries in the region. If you, but the end game should be basically for us here. Though it's, I don't think this is on the mind of politicians at this stage. I'm afraid, of course, it's necessary. I would support Secretary, Blinken's first tweet about calling for a ceasefire. I would support that. Of course, it was changed. It was deleted. We do need ceasefire. We need. It's very important to think beyond the idea of having simply a lull, that cessation of fire or whatever. The calm should not be the end game, because that would only mean down the road just simply going through the same cycle. So we should really think about really the having an independent Palestinian state. Again, I would, who am I to call for such a thing? But think about it, and it is much needed. And the end of the occupation would liberate both sides, not only one side.
People are familiar with this kind of outlook because they say the Ukrainians must have sovereignty, an independent state. They must be rid of the occupiers, the Russians, I suppose. So this kind of attitude is there, but for some reason it doesn't seem to apply everywhere. It applies in Europe, but not in the Middle East, which is a bit mysterious. I haven't quite worked out how one can support it in Ukraine, but not for Palestine. But maybe there's a mystery.
Yeah, there was a Western journalist who said, if you remember at the very beginning, he said, "These are blonde people. These are white blonde people," and that makes a difference. So we are not blonde, So we cannot do. What should we do? Because of our color, we are going to suffer. Double standard. It's a Eurocentric thing. You think that the old ways, old habits, they say old habits die hard, and it seems that this is really a case. But there was a journalist who spoke about they are blonde. They are blonde.
Yeah, I saw the footage. Yeah.
So the Palestinians, they unfortunately they did make a mistake, a big mistake. I'm not going to dwell much about this in Jordan, but they did make a mistake, a big mistake, and they ended up leaving Jordan. And the Palestinian, the PLO, after that, pretty much was in Lebanon, and in 1982. Israel invaded Lebanon, and the aim was driving the PLO out.
Right.
And they resisted. They were very brave. They were. They did, fight. But ultimately, they accepted the terms of leaving Beirut. If you have seen this image right in front of us, that's the Palestinians leaving Beirut. And I think Arafat went to Greece and then to Tunisia, where his headquarters became. And the next was a very sad story, because when the Palestinians were not around, still the Israeli army was in Beirut, and the Phalange militia, Kataib, they killed thousands of Palestinian refugees in a couple of days under the nose of the Israeli army. This is talk about men, women, children. That was a very sad story. So they were exposed. I was once in across the lake, of Geneva. There is a high mountain, and that's a place where people from different parts of the world meet. They call it but it is CAUX, in Switzerland, and across the lake from Geneva, a place where people meet, and they, whatever is the case. But one of them was one of those leaders from the Phalange. He admitted publicly his role. He cried. He wept. He regretted. But I saw him in a different documentary later on. After that meeting in Co, I saw him still insisting on his role, but he spoke more about his role, and he said that they brought Palestinian men, the fighters, who were still around, but the men in general, and there was a water well, and he will order the execution of one by one. He was the judge, if you will. He would say yes. And out of all those who were killed, he said that one Palestinian in particular stared him in the eyes. It seems, for whatever reason, he could not forget that. In Co, Switzerland, he was regretting what he did. In the documentary, he was defiant, but I think he was messed up. You could see that his body was shaking, probably psychologically. And he said that he's on a bunch of medications. Probably he cannot really live with the memory of all those he ordered to be executed. And this is why this is something for people who give orders to kill. Okay, when it's really a clear case of war crimes, but again, it seems that we are the exception. We are still invisible. We are being dehumanized. I don't want this to be. I have very strong position against nuclear proliferation. I think even my argument is that even a rubber bullet is a weapon of mass destruction, because if it really hits a boy in the head and he is damaged for life, you kill the potential for this boy to grow up, to get married, to procreate. So down the road, you can calculate it. It is still mass destruction, even in the so-called rubber. And rubber bullets, by the way, they are not totally rubber. They have metal core. They accelerate, and they kill. This is a commemoration of Sabra and Shatila, September 16th, 1982. And by the way, the Palestinians in Sabra and in the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, at one point there were like 90 professions they cannot really work. So they have to find a job somewhere in the, there's 90 jobs they cannot work. And in a documentary, it's shocking that there are electric wires hanging in the camp that I saw, and in that documentary it showed that many of them get killed every year simply from being exposed, just simply electrocuted by the hanging wires. And there's a certain state, whether it's the physical state of the camp, the psychological state, because I'm sure that you might think immediately, why don't they just put them in large pipes or just raise them? Or it could be a state of mind. It's just like these are Palestinian ladies who buried their loved ones in in 1982, and this is an image that reminds us of the first Intifada. The Intifada means simply an uprising, and during the first Intifada, Rabin he ordered the.
So who was? Sorry, I know this is very obvious to you, but it may not be to many people. Who is Rabin?
Rabin was the prime minister at the time. His signatory. I mean, he was the same.
Okay.
He was at the time. He was not probably. He was at least. He ordered the what we know as the breaking the arms of the Palestinians policy. Whether he was the military commander probably at the time,
right.
the minister of defense, or whatever, he gave the orders to break the arms of Palestinians who throw stones, and there is footage literally of soldiers holding the arm of Palestinian. One of them would bring a stone and literally break the arm at the elbow. That was really part of the, and people could get killed for raising the Palestinian flag. Just really a couple of days ago, even Palestinians who shoot fireworks at the soldiers get killed. They did.
And indeed, less lethal, but in the West now, it's now illegal in France and Germany to protest in favor of the Palestinians. All pro-Palestinian Germany have been banned. I mean, I'm not making this up. The BBC reported this last night, and in Britain, it's very difficult to do it. I've seen scenes of young people just with Palestinian flags being arrested by a lot of police, as if it's some kind of the dangerous threat to the social order, just protesting with a Palestinian flag. So there's a big clampdown on pro-Palestinian sentiment, even in so-called free societies in the West. In many, I'm not saying it's the same in Scandinavia. I have no idea, but certainly in France and Germany, and to some extent in Britain, that is the case.
And I remember one thing about Edward Said, the famous Palestinian intellectual, that when he visited South Lebanon, he took a stone and he threw it in the direction of the whatever, the fence, the wall, so in the direction of Palestine. And they made a big issue about Edward Said, and Columbia University came to his side, and they said that kind of stone throwing is really passive resistance. If you are really in your armored military jeep, that kid cannot really harm you. And I remember in the second Intifada, kids were killed in Gaza from soldiers in their towers, and Israeli media was blaming the mothers of the children, why why their mothers basically don't really keep them at home. So you kill them because they were you look at the kid, and there were cases of children being arrested for 5-6 years old, and the Attorney General supported the action of the military in arresting such really babies. That's part of the picture. It's can't they? When Jews protest, they don't use such force with them. Okay, whatever they do, and there are other countries where obviously crowd management, crowd dispersing, whatever, you don't use lethal force in such a case, but now dehumanizing people leads definitely to killing without any. No one will be held accountable ultimately, even if nominally they do. No one is seriously punished, but this is part of the picture. The result of the Intifada was really the Oslo Accords. I know that probably we took too much time, but the Oslo Accords, as the name, there were meetings. In fact, there were two groups of Palestinians, negotiating with the Israelis. There was a group in Madrid, Haider Abd al-Shafi, Hanan Ashrawi. So that was the group that was taking place, that the negotiations that were taking place in front of everybody. But there was a secret negotiations take place in Oslo, and ultimately they came up with the Oslo Accords, and you can see this image at the White House. But what the Palestinians agreed to at the time, by postponing the final, final resolution issues like Jerusalem, the refugees, and I think it was a mistake. I think they should have really dealt with everything at once. And there might be people who do things in goodwill, but you don't count on goodwill in terms of if you talk about the future of the region, really. So people should really deal with everything at once. Later on, it should have been 5 years interim agreement. Okay, it began with Jericho and Gaza, dividing the West Bank into areas A, B, and C, and ultimately sidelining the Palestinian Authority. I mean, I don't know how this is good for anyone. And there are many other details. Unfortunately, they're not really good. They're not good for for our future, really. Israel did not speak to President Abu Mazen, to the Palestinian Authority, for about 14 years now. There might be certain things, for practical things, that the junior officers talk to each other or something like that in terms of managing, practical things. But political solution, zero, nada. They as if Ramallah does not really exist. And the very meeting today in Amman between Blinken and Abu Mazen is telling. It's not Ramallah. It's Amman. This is. I think that part of the ways, and not the way forward. It could be we continue as like this forever. Okay, we could. I mean, it's just like managing the occupation. Israel plus, rather than Israel and Palestine, it's Israel plus. And or simply you talk about two-state solution. Okay, two-state solution, but we talk about really on equal footing, not subservient in any way, not to be trapped. I think
But I mean, although many people would share that view, of course, but and this is a separate issue, and I know you're going through a narrative here. I don't want to reinterrupt that, but there's no way on earth at the moment that Israel will ever recognize a Palestinian state. It seems they won't even recognize Palestinian existence. Netanyahu recently at the United Nations, in his map of Israel. So it's just a theoretical bit. I don't mean for you, but in the West, and Western politicians talk about a two-state solution. I wonder how much of that is merely a rhetorical statement, that there's actually no belief in it at all. It's just something they say, because the reality is it's not going to happen, at least in the foreseeable future. Anyway, I'm not saying never, never, of course, because things do change. Unpredictable things happen. The world does change in ways we never expect. The Soviet Union collapsed. The Berlin Wall came down. The British Empire ended, etc., etc. So big changes happen, and even in our lifetime. But at the moment, it's impossible to see how the Israeli regime will allow the Palestinians any political authority, because they see them as an existential threat that needs to be exterminated, basically. I mean, to put it dramatically.
I don't, I don't think that really do they see the Palestinians as an existential threat, or simply they see the
rhetoric.
if
The way they're talking about the Gaza situation is very much that language.
Probably without a Palestinian state, they could still have free hand in grabbing whatever they grab. Okay, but that should not be the modus operandi. This is not really the and when we things could definitely change if we talk about not as an alternative, okay, but immediate equal rights, equal share of water. My position has been one person, one share of water, whether you are a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim, regardless of your passport, regardless of, just to begin with, the moment you talk about sharing on equal footing, I know that this might, even anger some people on my side when I speak like this, but, I think it's simply, I think like it would have a domino effect. The moment you accept one share per person in terms of water, which is a big issue here. I mean, we have a reduction in the amount of water to the city of Bethlehem. That's from my what I have read. And the number of Palestinians is getting, of course, Dr. Bernard Sabella, a Palestinian Catholic, he's professor of sociology. He was my professor even at one point in like literally 40 years ago. But he's on record saying that the number of Palestinians will double in 18 years. Okay, and I'm sure that there are people who keep track of these things.
No, it's true.
We have now the number of people, the roads. We have traffic jams because of course because of security as occupiers, they will not allow highways. Like literally, we need a highway that zooms from Hebron, okay, passes by Bethlehem, passes by Jerusalem, which means no E1. It's like all the there's plenty of things that one can speak about. There's like an arch of settlements surrounding Jerusalem to separate it from the West Bank through this arch of settlements. So this highway would zoom through the West Bank, as I said, Hebron, Bethlehem, east of Jerusalem, east of Ramallah, all the way to Nablus and Jenin. One big highway, like let's say 6 lanes, 8 lanes, whatever is the case. You need such a thing, but they will never allow it. But the number of people will put pressure ultimately, and I'm sure that at this stage probably we are almost equal between the river and the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. But my position is we should push for that immediate. As I say, again, this is not an alternative to the political solution, but why not put in place immediately equal rights plus working directly? Not you need a ceasefire, but the end game should be a Palestinian state. We need to be separated from each other for a while, and then we'll think about other things that could be done in the future. But we need to be separated. And there's so much going on that a binational state will be. Definitely, if it's not a two-state solution, it's going to be full-fledged apartheid. And it might work for 10, 20, I don't know, maybe 7 years, maybe 50 years. And down the road, what will be the end result of this? The world will wake, to up to a different reality, and they will ultimately say enough is enough.
Okay, and the next stage is the second Intifada, is it?
The second Intifada, the second Intifada, the first Intifada, we might say that it was a non-violent Intifada. In fact, Mubarak Awad, just at the very beginning of the Intifada, a Palestinian Christian started a non-violent movement, literally watching Gandhi movies and at the beginning speaking about non-violence and even talking about Islamic textual sources in support of non-violence. He's Christian. And it began by boycotting the dairy products. At the time, probably was only one dairy company called Nova. And I remember that Professor Jad Ishaq, professor of chemistry, biology from Bethlehem University, he started selling, literally plants, but, vegetable plants, seedlings, and he was arrested for that. And Beit Sahur became, there's a Christian, one of the three Christian towns, Bethlehem, Beit Jala, and Beit Sahur. Talk about shepherds, the Manger, you have the Manger Square, and then to the east you have the Shepherd's Field or something in Beit Sahur. That town was literally at the forefront of nonviolent resistance, burning the IDs and refusing to pay taxes. So pretty much, and of course, ultimately Israel deported Mubarak out of the United States, and he said he will convert to Judaism and make aliyah if necessary. He didn't, of course, convert. But that was the end of the that non-violent movement. It's the context is that the things were not moving forward. Okay, and it seems that the whole story about the blockade on the Muqata'a, the Yasser Arafat's headquarters in Ramallah, destroying the walls surrounding it with the tanks and what have you, was based on Yasser Arafat's, giving up hope on the process, the Oslo process. And it seems that, it seems that this is why Marwan Barghouthi, the Fatah leader, is in jail, because there was armed resistance at the time. That instigated so that was a change. The Second Intifada included that part, and it led, unfortunately, down the road to poisoning Yasser Arafat. This is really what the media says about the tests that took place in France, I believe. So the Second Intifada practically did not achieve much, except that putting the Palestinian issue back. And then you talk about a new phase where the Palestinian leadership practically renounced armed resistance. They put all their eggs in one basket, just trusting that the process will yield something, and but not much. I attended a meeting. I was simply waiting for my turn to speak to a group of Dutch, it's Comenius, the name of the group, Dutch businessmen, politicians, judges, professors, what have you. They came to learn about the Palestinian issue, and I arrived a bit early, or rather the speaker before me, took a little bit more time, and he was asked one question, which was the question was, what did the Palestinians achieve through negotiations thus far until that moment? And so, if anything really big, because the Palestinians do have a negotiation team, and it was led by Dr. Saeb Ariqat, he passed away, and he wrote a book about really life is about negotiation or something like that. But nothing big happened through negotiations. That's really the issue. And as I said at one point, that for 14 years, Israel did not really engage the Palestinian leadership in any serious talk about the what I call the end game here in terms of the Palestinian state, or any of these final issues. And in fact, Israel does not allow any activity in Jerusalem to take place if it is sponsored by the PA or the PLO or nothing. In fact, things used to be way better early on after Oslo. The Palestinians believed that Oslo brought an end to the occupation. Literally, the Palestinians gave flowers to the Israeli soldiers. Literally, they gave flowers to the Israeli soldiers. So, but this is really where we are. I think, yeah, not a pretty picture, I say.
No. Are there any more slides in your presentation, or is it...
I think I think it's enough. It's been 2 hours.
Okay.
And I think it's this picture probably reminds us that sometimes you need to simply hammer down all the issues at once, so that there'll be that the death of one leader or the other will not really lead to the failure of the whole process. But there has to be genuine. I would say that I would advise anyone really, any side, any party that is going to sign a treaty with Israelis to use the services of professors of law, people who really know the language, so that there'll be no nothing that will impair or no buts in the from that perspective. We need to.
I know you're right, but it's just I get the sense that I saw we also on the last year the president of the European Union speaking very. She's a German doctor by profession, Ursula von der Leyen. Last year, condemning Russia's attacks against civilian infrastructure, especially electricity, cutting off men, women, and children from water, and so on, and condemning these as war crimes, and how these are pure acts of terror. That's her expression, and how we have to call it as such. She said. So there's a very clear, this is in her address to the European Parliament. It's on YouTube, actually. I retweeted it myself. She's very clear that kind of behavior, these actions against civilians are terrorism and are condemned. And yet these are precisely, in those very terms, what the Israelis are doing now, promise are doing now to the Palestinians in Gaza. The point of me saying this is not to point out the double standards, hypocrisy of certain people in the West, which is obvious, but the law, international law, is already very clear anyway that attacking civilian infrastructure, electricity, depriving people of water, heating, etc., is a war crime, and that hasn't stopped them doing it. And they've got complete cover. The American Secretary of State has just said, I saw it on Sky News, that Israel as a democracy, like all democracies, upholds the law, international law, and defends international law. It's very clear that this is an honourable country that defends international law. I'm not making this up. I saw it on Sky News just earlier.
I saw it myself. I find it hard to think that this is. I just think, am I living in some kind of crazy alternative universe at the moment, when nothing makes sense anymore? But if serious politicians like the Secretary of State of the United States can say that, seriously believes that Israel, as calling it a democracy, like all democracies, we uphold the rule of law. If you can actually say that at this moment in history, I'm almost lost for words in terms of taking anything seriously anymore, because it doesn't. The rule of law is clearly passionately believed in when it comes to Russia and occupying Ukraine.
very seriously, and we go to war over it. But when it comes to the same set of actions in another part of the world, it is completely ignored and indeed defended, and these people are praised for upholding the law internationally. I mean, you couldn't make it up if you tried. No one would believe you if you wrote a novel like this. No one's going to believe this is happening, but it is.
Well, I mean, probably you know about what's her name, Ursula von der
Ursula von der Leyen. She's the president of the European Union, and
yes.
she's a German doctor by profession or something.
She when it was Russia and Ukraine, and they talk about the lack, you know, no electricity, no water, no food, no. She said this is terrorism.
This is 12 months ago, by the way. It's not ancient history. 12 months ago, last year, in October last year, exactly 12 months ago, she said this.
Yeah. So this is it's quite unfortunate, and yes, I don't think that the word democratic by definition would really translate
into virtue. I never quite understood. The democratic system doesn't automatically mean you're virtuous, does it? I never quite understood why it meant that, because apparently it does. If simply most people voting for something means they're automatically virtuous by virtue of being a majority, I mean, I don't see that as a serious ethical theory. I've never heard of an ethicist or a moral theologian or a moral philosopher ever arguing that simply by having a group of people agree on something, ergo, it's a good thing. I just don't get it.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, we have clear cases where democracies talk about, you know, the upholding the law or international law. We know from President Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair, they broke the law. And caused a disaster through their decision, and there were plenty of fake news to cover up their,
mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein being a threat to America, you know, as if he could possibly have been. And I'm also note that whenever we talk about Hitler becoming Chancellor of Germany in 1933 or 1932, is always when he seized power, when he took control. Actually, he was elected democratically by the German people in a fair election. So he was actually legitimate democratically, but no one ever says that. It's always when he seized power, you know. No, he didn't seize power. He was elected by the people in due process.
No, I'm definitely. In fact, I did. You know, it did cross my mind, but I thought that I should not really. Probably it was more of a. I thought that was probably a sense. You know, but if you know, talking about you know, Hitler and democracy, people might not realize that this is really what brought him to power. And you know, I think you know, what's going to the shape to the you know, how to run a state. It's still people, they talk about this, what kind of state, even for us as Palestinians. Of course, we don't have right now. In fact, it's one of the issues that I think about in terms of end game. We should have elections in Palestine, and the international community should respect this. We should have our own parliament. We should have, you know, a functioning, you know, but not, you know, as long as we are under occupation, we are going to have really, you know, it cannot.
I agree with you. But my view now is I'm being cynical at the moment, and I think justifiably cynical, is that what you're saying is perfectly reasonable, but you could go ahead and do that. But the West, although it may say that it supports democracy and the rule of law and human rights, we know in reality it only supports these things when it agrees with a particular cause or geopolitical interest that underpin it. So, you know, it's against terrorism when it comes to Russia, but it's not against terrorism when another state does it. It's for human rights, except when it comes to, you know, invading countries in Guantanamo Bay or Abu Ghraib or, you know, black sites like Europe. And so just a belief that having a functioning parliament, it will get the West's approval, doesn't follow, because if it doesn't meet their interests as they perceive them, they will simply dismiss it. It's not automatic. So the rhetoric of believing in democracy you could argue, is largely a mirage. It's a mechanism. It's not consistently applied. It's selective. It's not real. except in particular cases. But in other cases, it's not real. Do you know what I mean? So I'm being cynical, that's all.
I'm 100% aware of the fact that Western democracies are not bringing in new leadership that will change the situation here. Yes, this, as you can see for yourself, what's going to change? If we have, there might be something there, but in general, the position vis-a-vis the Palestinian issue still, it's not. We are not on equal footing in terms of being human beings. We have been dehumanized. Our issue, we have been dehumanized. We became, as I said, from day one, from the Balfour Declaration, saying that that we are non-Jews. We were the majority. And it's not about being a majority. It does not really. But the issues, as I said, here they have distinguished. And let's put it this way: there was no Holocaust yet. People miss the point, because the Israeli narrative, it begins with the Holocaust. Really, we talk about 1897, and so we talk about really many decades before the Holocaust. The decision to establish a national home for the Jews, really a Jewish state in Palestine. They knew, in fact, people like Ahad Ha'am, one of the Jewish intellectuals, they interpret him differently. But one interpretation is that he realized that there are people here, and the issue should be, cultural Judaism, a revival of the Hebrew language. But of course, he was interpreted, in a different way at the turn of the century. What does it mean to have? Because Jews, I'm not going to say that the Jews were without any blemishes, but again, the Holocaust was European. The pogroms, in fact, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, they are very Judaophobic, and they are the product of Russia. And I would say that people, Muslims, Palestinians, Arabs, they should never subscribe to such a narrative. Maybe because of the pain they go through, maybe because of the anger, but they should never subscribe to such a narrative. This is very, very important to realize that their problem was European, or excellence, really. And again, it was not only Germany.
No, indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed, Professor Dr. Mustafa Abu Sway. You're actually in Jerusalem at the moment, obviously, and I do wish you and your family and your loved ones and your friends and everyone safety and good health, and all the people of Palestine in these indescribably difficult times. And the situation is still changing minute by minute. It's quite extraordinary. On Telegram, that there's this is almost at random. There's a thing called War Monitor on Telegram. It gives you photographs of minute by minute events as are happening in Lebanon, the occupied territories, in Gaza, and so on. Actually photographed because of telecommunications, the internet. Now, you can sit anywhere in the world in your living room and watch what's happening. Or at least selected bits of it anyway that they show you. And so there's a sense of being involved that we've never had before in history, even though we're physically very remote from things,
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about almost like the Nakba is an ongoing thing. So when we spoke about the Nakba of 1948, it's not that it is done. The Holocaust is done. Okay, the Nakba is not done. It's ongoing. It still has that ing to it. It's and this is why it's very important to address it. It's and the outcome. In fact, it's quite unfair. It's quite as I said, in terms of life under occupation, people don't realize how subtle things could be, how camouflage things could be, how covered things could. The separation wall is built on the land of the West Bank. Like it carved more land west of the wall, near the city of Qalqilia. They have, it's a flat really land, but they have next to the wall they created artificial hills and trees, so that you would, when you drive on Route 6 towards the north, you don't see that wall. So out of you don't exist. Once I picked up a copy of the Yediot Ahronot, it's a Hebrew newspaper, and I said to myself, I'd like simply to see what they write about us. At the time, the Yediot Ahronot was the most circulated newspaper. Probably it's not, most probably it's not the most circulated today. But at the time, I just picked up to see what do they write about us. For us, our local newspaper will have people being arrested, people being shot, land confiscation, all these things. Nothing, nada, niente. That's nothing about us. And in that particular, for whatever reason, I did not really study for, like, let's say, a month of worth of. But I picked up, one copy, and I said, what do they write about us? Nothing. So you could live in Tel Aviv, go to the beach in the normal, and just simply as if we do not exist, as if the Palestinian issue does not exist. And as I said, this should not be the case.
No, indeed.
Calm should not be the normative mode of existence.
Early at the moment, we can't, in the West, in many countries anyway, France, Germany, and Britain, we can't actually protest about this because it's becoming illegal in a democratic society, in these societies that are praised for being, superior. We can't even we can't protest about it because you could be arrested, and people have been arrested. So it's a very ugly phase we're going through at the moment. And I pray that we will have patience and wisdom to endure it.
Exactly.
But thank you again, Professor Dr. Mustafa Abu Sway, for your time in our goods, and I really appreciate it, inshallah, and see you again. Take care.
See you. Assalamu alaikum.